The US is readying for a possible missile strike on Syria, and reports say preparations are already underway. The Pentagon is moving its naval forces closer, ensuring President Obama has military options available. Now, he's met with his advisors to consider action following an alleged chemical attack, which is being blamed on Syria's government. Well, 3 destroyers are currently now in the Mediterranean, and there are reports that a 4th is on its way, all of them carrying up to 300 cruise missiles, which is more than enough to act rapidly if Obama wants to order a strike. There's also the NATO maritime group in the region, which includes 4 more ships. And if we take a look at the mainland, the US and its Western allies' military presence around Syria, then that is also significant. RT's Marina Portnar is following America's military maneuvers.
Well, it appears that the U.S. is no longer just using words to address the ongoing Syrian crisis. Plans of possible military action are now being deliberated. Now, despite the fact that the unconfirmed reports made by the Syrian rebels have not been verified, President Obama has called recent allegations of chemical weapons being used by the Syrian government a big event of grave concern. Now, a White House official says that the U.S. has a range of options and that the Obama administration is going to act very deliberately in making decisions consistent with U.S. national security interests and how Washington can advance its objectives in Syria. Meantime, on Friday, the U.S. Navy had repositioned a ship armed with cruise missiles in the Mediterranean. U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said Obama has already asked the Pentagon for options on Syria. According to CBS News, potential targets include command bunkers and launchers used to fire chemical weapons. Now, up until this point, the U.S. leader has been very cautious over intervening in Syria, previously saying, quote, the U.S. should be wary of being drawn into very expensive, difficult, costly interventions that actually breed more resentment in the region, unquote. However, 1 year ago, Obama also said that chemical weapons used in Syria would be a red line for the United States, and now he is under pressure, growing pressure to act. U.S. officials have acknowledged that there is no conclusive evidence linking Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to this week's alleged chemical attacks. Nonetheless, a State Department spokesperson has also said that Washington doesn't believe the rebels are capable of carrying out chemical attacks. So logically, this would lead one to think that the White House has already found the Syrian government guilty of the alleged chemical weapons being used in Syria. Now, the media has also played a significant role in recent days, with many Western media outlets looping very sad and shocking video of dead victims in Syria, while reporting that the assumption is that the Syrian government is behind the mass killings.
Marina Portnar there. Well, new reports from Syria say the army has discovered chemicals in an area earlier controlled by opposition forces. And despite no confirmation of reports that the government carried out a chemical attack, international pressure on Assad is increasing. Now, the French foreign minister insists all indications suggest the government was behind the massacre and wants to respond with force if the allegations are proved. The UK Foreign Secretary William Hague has also said that this chemical attack was carried out by the Assad regime. And here's a similar voice from Sweden. Its foreign minister claimed he had a hard time coming to any conclusion other than that the deadly chemicals were used by the regime's forces. While Turkey joined in, calling for necessary response to what it condemned as the crime against humanity. Well, Obama has called America an indispensable nation in stabilizing the Middle East. Yet there has been no international reaction so far on the chemical findings of the Syrian army. Well, RT's Middle East correspondent Paula Sleer has more.
Syrian state television is reporting that Syrian soldiers found traces of chemical agents after entering tunnels used by rebel fighters in a Damascus suburb. The empty shells that they found had markings on them that said that they had been made in Saudi Arabia. Just a reminder that Saudi Arabia is vehemently opposed to the Syrian President Bashar Assad. Now, the soldiers started suffocating and ambulances had to be sent to the scene to assist them. Syrian television is also reporting that the soldiers found antidotes that are used to heal the intoxication. This comes after reports of a new attack earlier this week that saw the involvement of chemical weaponry. We have heard reports that anywhere between dozens and 1,300 people were killed in that new attack. There has been lots of unverified footage making the rounds online. We've seen photos of people foaming at the mouth, people suffocating, all of it pointing to the possible use of sarin gas. Some of the photos online do show empty shells. It does seem to point to the fact that this latest attack had this weaponry fired from rebel-held areas. All of this comes as UN inspectors are inside Syria. They arrived last Sunday. They're carrying out investigations on some 13 other reports of chemical weapon usage. The UN chief of disarmament arrived in the country, and the UN team has now been tasked with trying to reach the scene of this latest chemical attack. And Damascus has indicated that they're giving them full support and they will be helping them in whatever way they can. But there is heavy fighting on the go in that area.
Paula Sleer reporting there. Well, there's still been no confirmation about the number of victims of the alleged mass chemical attack. Doctors Without Borders say they have received around 3,600 patients suffering from intoxication following the reported assault. 355 of them have reportedly died. But exactly who was behind the attack is still hard to verify, despite the West suspecting Assad and not the rebels. Well, let's talk more about this with Daoud Khair Allah. He's a professor of international law at Georgetown University. Professor, these are fresh allegations now coming in that the rebels are indeed using chemical weapons. Will the US take this into consideration when they decide what to do next?
I think the US cannot take any action without some verifiable evidence about who's the party that is responsible. I think if it is going to turn out to be the rebels who are using these weapons or this poisonous material, the US would be embarrassed because it will be the allies of the US, so to speak, the opposition that the US has been supporting and claiming that these are people who are seeking democracy and rule of law and fighting corruption or whatever in Syria. And this is the purpose of the regime change. The U.S. would like to prove, or would like, and some of its allies, that it is the regime who has done this. But this has not been independently proven, verified, and without an independent verification, I doubt this American President, Obama, especially that he did say that we need to be sure about who has used these weapons. We need to evaluate the costs to the U.S., both financially and morally. We need, since it is a crime against humanity, a crime that concerns the entire the world over, the humanity in general, we like some kind of international approval, that is the Security Council.
We know that the rebels. We know that the rebels have been infiltrated by extremist elements. Is there not a chance that those extremist elements could have chemical weapons and use them? And of course, as you say, the rebels are being supported by the US, but that could be something that the US chooses to ignore.
Yeah, but this is the selective approach that the US has. The US is supporting the opposition, the armed opposition. It is consenting to arming them, even though the U.S. would like to appear as not involved itself. It didn't have its hands dirty. But the U.S. supports the armed opposition in Syria. Among these armed opposition, there are fighters who belong to Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda derivatives. And the U.S. knows that. And the U.S. knows that these are the strongest on the ground. So supporting, in general, the opposition, the armed opposition, and trying to distance itself from what some groups will do in terms of chemical weapons or some other slaughters, and there is lots of slaughters that have been committed by the rebels, it's a little bit embarrassing to the U.S., and it will be a source of embarrassment.
And just briefly, why, though, although the US doesn't know who's responsible, why are now we seeing this military build-up in the region? As I've just reported earlier about the Navy now, the presence there, the US Navy in the Mediterranean, and also other elements now. Why are we seeing that?
Well, I can think of three reasons. One, the US president said that chemical weapons, the use of chemical weapons, is a red line. And now first the public opinion in the US and the world public opinion is telling Mr. Obama, here you said what are you doing? What have you done? So he wants to appear as being serious about it. 2, trying to put pressure on the Syrian government. And 3, raise the morale of the opposition who are not doing well apparently on the ground, and give them hope that the US is about to do something. But I think if we would take all what the US president has said, does not indicate that a military action is imminent.
But do you think in the long term, more loss of life and the allegations of chemical weapons being used, that they will indeed have to intervene at some stage? And although you say this could be just a gesture at the moment, it could be a reality.
I don't think that the US has proven to be very concerned about the loss of life. If it were, the arming the rebels would not be the way, or supporting arming the rebels, supporting the armed resistance. There is no law in the world that would give legitimacy to a group of people taking arms against the government. International law does not allow a country to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries. The US knows that Geneva would be the way. The Russians have been saying this from day one. This is what a United Nations was created to find a peaceful settlement to international disputes among nations. It doesn't say that give the two parties weapons so that they can kill each other. If the US wanted to put an end to the Syrian bloodshed, I think it is capable of doing that. But it seems that what appears to be the case, the US would say the opposition, the regime is a regime that we don't care for. They don't do what we like them to do. And the opposition, especially that Al-Qaeda, and if they perish, it is not a huge loss to the US. The actions of both destroy Syria, will put Israel at ease, and would make of Syria a weaker country. And as long as this is taking place without any cost to the US, without any moral or material cost, it's the Syrians doing it to themselves with a little encouragement by us manipulation. But in general, I don't think the US is convincing when someone claims that it wants to see an end to the bloodshed in Syria.
Professor Daoud Khair Allah, thank you very much. Good to talk to you on this. Thanks for joining us live on RT.